SRAM's not competing against Shimano, and Trek's not competing against Specialized. We're all competing against pickleball and video games. I want to get people on bikes, and the collective bike industry is competing against the other alternatives these people could do. Skiing and snowboarding, backpacking, canoeing, video games. We're all vying for people's time and further interests. We wanted to spend that time on a bike. So the investment took 5 companies to pull it off. If you went to trail there, but there were no kids with bikes, the trail doesn't matter. If you could donate a bunch of bikes and the kids don't have a place to ride them, it doesn't matter. If the bikes break down and you don't have anyone who can fix them, that's the real ecosystem.
Welcome to Ride Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. I'll leave a link on the show notes. And today's episode, we sit down with Rob Cappucci, Director of Advocacy and Industry Partnerships at SRAM. So what's in it for you? If you ever wondered how bikes can transform lives, communities, neighborhoods, and even industries, this episode gives you a glimpse into the roadmap. Rob reveals how cycling can be more than just a sport. It could be the purpose, the identity, and the belonging that binds us all together. So whether you are a cycling enthusiast, an industry insider, or someone looking for a bit of inspiration, Rob's story connects personally to the everyday journey we're all on, becoming more active, intentional, and connected through the simple act of riding a bike. You'll also learn how advocacy investments like NICA are shaping the next generation of cyclists to be more confident, more resilient young people. You'll hear behind the scenes stories about how the biggest bike brands, even rivals, are coming together to grow the entire cycling ecosystem. And you will discover why infrastructure, inclusion, and intentional partnerships matter more than ever. But more than stats, stories, and strategies, Rob shares what keeps him hopeful. From his own transformative rides in Belgium and San Francisco to the kids finding their voice through high school mountain bike leagues. And last but not least, this is a conversation about freedom, fear, and fun. How riding a bike can still be the most human thing we all do. Before we get into the podcast, please stick around and share the podcast with anyone you think might be relevant, and follow the Ride Success podcast wherever you listen. Now, let's get into the conversation. Welcome, Rob, to Ride Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Pedro. Nice to meet you.
Brilliant. So, I wanted to start by first giving a little bit of information about, who you are and what are your roots, and for people that might not know you. So where did the bike came into your life, and how did, it seemed that it took over your life, and kind of you have been part of the cycling industry, for decades now. How did it start?
I think like most people, I had a bike as a kid, and it's kind of just what we did. You rode your bike, that's how you got places. And you rode your bike to school, you rode your bike around town. And but it was more of sort of as the kid thing. And then when I didn't have a car, I would ride. And then I was like a lot of people, I got a car and I didn't really ride that much. I didn't ride in college. I didn't ride after that. But then I moved to Belgium. And I spent a year in Belgium.
Right.
And
so for the people that not knowing, Rob is based in the US, and I'm sure you grew up in the US as well. So
yes,
okay.
I did.
Where did you grow up in the US, by the way?
I grew up in upstate New York, so a small town that had a lot of hills. So biking was a little bit of a challenge. But so I moved to Belgium in 1992. And, of course, I took a bike. I was working for an international manufacturing company, a company called FMC, and they had a factory in Aalst, Belgium, which is halfway between, it's about half an hour outside of Brussels.
Right, okay.
And I had a bike, and everybody there was riding a bike. And
yes,
Belgium, I couldn't ride my bike to work, but on Sundays, as you know, things are closed, right? Stores aren't open, and so Sunday I'd ride my bike. and I'd go out for rides that I thought was a long ride. I'd go ride for 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. And it was just sort of something to do. And then I moved from there to San Francisco. And in 93, mountain biking was still like on sort of a big rise. So I started
on
mountain
upward
biking.
trajectory, yes.
Yes. And that's where it really took hold. And then that's all I wanted to do. And I remember I bought a bike for, I think it was $680. And my friends thought I was nuts. They couldn't believe that I spent that much on a bike. And from then on,
was in 93?
93. It was an aluminum Trek 7000.
You have to adjust that for inflation, so you're looking at over $1,000 easily.
Yeah.
Now, today's money, yeah.
Yeah. And then I moved from San Francisco. After a few years, I moved to Chicago, where this is before I started working at SRAM. I had about a 8 or 9 mile commute. I ride my bike to work. Again, everybody thought I was nuts. I live in Chicago. I ride year round. I just started buying more clothing. And it sort of became like just then really part of my life. And then I got really lucky and came to SRAM in 2003 and then just started biking even more. And now that's what everybody thinks. If I don't show up with a bike helmet, people have no idea how I got there.
Well, it's a good excuse. Like, I mean, places to be, kind of, you have to. The bike became so intrinsic in part of your life. When you started riding back in 93, was it because of the kind of mountain biking was an upward trajectory? Like everyone was like looking out for these new trend, the new bikes the mountain bikes that were being built. Was it a particular microcosmos of San Francisco, or was it something more?
Well, as you probably know,
widespread?
Mountain biking really got its birth in Northern California. So Gary Fisher, Tom Ritchie, Charlie Cunningham, Joe Breeze, those are sort of the guys who started mountain biking and they started modifying bikes and riding on the dirt trails. So that was really where it was. So, right. So, and then I had some friends that rode bikes. And so that was it. It wasn't like everybody I knew was riding a bike, but I had a few of them. And I was a runner and I played tennis outside and I was always looking for ways to be outside. And this one, I think it was every, Saturday or Sunday morning, we'd go for a ride, then we'd go to brunch in our bike clothes, and it just became a great social aspect and certainly fitness and physical and fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way of getting on bikes, having fun, just making it a social part of your life, because that brings much more joy than just if you focus too narrowly on maybe racing, for instance.
We used to ride up to this top of this Mount Tamalpais, and we'd get off our bikes and we'd sit around and we just talk about life. We talk about our jobs. We talk about the jobs we lost. And then we'd start to nerd out and talk about bikes. And at the time, there was no suspension. So the mountain bike rock shocks hadn't really come out. And there was just a few people who were either hardcore or were rich. And they were starting to put suspension on their bikes. And we would have these endless debates about whether or not we would want to put the suspension fork on our bike. No, I don't want it. It changes the geometry of the bike. Yes, but then you can ride over rocky things. And it was just, it was kind of inane, but we were just young and we would just sit out there and talk about the stuff all the time.
Yeah, as always, chatting over bikes. You can spend hours and hours just nerding out.
And it's funny now because
stuff like that.
It was hard to spend out. And bikes were nothing, right? It was a frame, it was wheels, and it was gears. And that was it. And we were still talking about them. And I don't think if you had given me unlimited time, I never could have imagined what a bike would look like today, what would be on it, and what it would cost even. There's no way I would have come up with it.
I guess that, what you say to that? I guess it just speaks about the where we are. Well, in terms of evolution of the equipment and where the industry is at the moment that has grown so massively and kind of, I mean, things, is still a frame. Like
Yes.
most of it is like on a road bike is a diamond frame. On the mountain bike, it's still very much similar, but so much has evolved since the 90s for the
And you're
better.
right. The road bike obviously changed less, but the mountain bike, going to a full suspension mountain bike with, a dropper seat post. But at the time, all we thought about was materials. So there were people who had steel bikes, and then when you got an upgrade, you paid a little more, like I did. Nobody had even thought about titanium.
Right.
It was just steel or aluminum. That was kind of your choices.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that speaks about the evolution of the bike industry and where we are now. And I mean, I wanted to, to touch, you kind of briefly described about your kind of work history, and you're now working at SRAM, and you have been working at SRAM for the last 20 years. And now you are the director of advocacy and industry partnerships at SRAM.
Yeah.
And, and kind of, I think this position is important in kind of in the global state of where the cycling industry sits, because it presents with a unique opportunity to foster new adoption, foster inclusivity, bring more youth into cycling. And one question that I want to ask, and kind of this kind of maybe will set the tone for the conversation that we're going to have, is what keeps you optimistic about the future of cycling?
I'm always optimistic about the future of cycling, in part because
that's good.
I love being on a bike. And there are more and more studies now that show the value of biking for not just fitness, for mental health, for socialization, of course, for general health. So all those things are never going to change. And it's pretty rare to talk to someone that doesn't aspire to riding their bike to work, riding their bike. There are certainly people who never learned to ride a bike and aren't comfortable with it. But more people than not will say to me, that's so great that you ride your bike to work. That's so great that you rode your bike to the party tonight. That's so great that you ride your bike to school. So I think there's an appetite for it. People just need the ability, a lot of its infrastructure to do it. And so I live in Chicago and I ride my bike year round. And when people say, oh, I could never do that, I always think the first thing they're going to say is weather. I don't want to be out in the rain. I don't want to be out when it's cold.
Yeah,
that is never
100%.
The first thing they say. The first thing they say is always safety. So when we can provide that, that's what gets people on bikes. And there's a statistics that's been around for a long time that you take the whole population, 2 or 3% of the people that ride every day, regardless of what it is, whether it's whether there's bike lane, whether it's 15 degrees out, whether it's raining, that's me, right? It's maybe you. I don't care. I'm comfortable. I'll ride on that. And then there's another 10% will ride if the conditions are good, right? If the weather's okay, it's warm enough, they're not going to ride in the winter. They're not going to ride when it's raining, but they like it and they do it. Then there's, say, 30%, 35% that aspire to do it. They really want to do it. They just don't feel comfortable enough. Maybe they don't have the capacity to buy a bike. Maybe they don't have a place to lock their bike if they ride it somewhere to visit. And then there's a percentage of people that are no way, no how. But by far the biggest percentage of people, it's 65, 70% fall in that category of if you make it, if it's easy enough, if it's comfortable enough, I'll ride. I think that's a great way to go. And then, of course, there's always going to be all the environmental reasons, right? Like a bike is always going to purely be a clean vehicle. And that's it, right? That does not exist in other worlds. And it's also, you can be totally on your own schedule, right? So even if you ride the bus, and when I don't ride my bike, I ride the bus. You got to wait for the bus. The bus doesn't go exactly where you want. If you drive your car, it's so much more expensive. And I think about how much money I've saved by not driving a car for 30 years. I have a car, but I don't use it very much. I ride my bike more. There's gas, there's insurance, there's parking. I don't have any of that on my bike, and I always park right in front of the restaurant or my office or wherever I go. It never I couldn't find parking. Oh, there was so much traffic.
Yeah.
I
mean, I can relate to that with to those, I understand those statistics, and I understand that kind of, fear plays a huge psychological barrier to people getting on their bikes. And then second that comes the infrastructure. Being in London where I'm based, I can see totally that. And people would want to ride their bikes, but one, they fear for their safety because they are sharing the roads with cars that 2 tons plus vehicles that can crush you. And also you have the cost of entry, which can be high if you have to buy all the equipment to ride safely. Now, I mean, and kind of that brings me to the question, with SRAM being a global company, in your view, what makes cycling advocacy investments truly impactful, for both the, SRAM and the community at large? Because you want to work with communities and benefit their projects, their ambitions, so that they can give back to their peers and then can improve with their programs. So, in your words, what does make cycling advocacy truly impactful?
Yeah, so we look at 3 big goals, and they're pretty simple. We want to see more people on bikes. We need to have more safe places to ride. And we also want to see industry growth. So that last one you could say is a little bit selfish, right? It's self-serving.
Yeah.
But it's not, let's say there's no true philanthropy, I think is the term, or there's no true altruism. So we're doing it because it benefits us. But we also care about these things, and it does care about the greater good. And so that's it. It's kind of that simple. And in our case, because we don't make products that go on commuter bikes, really, and we've been talking a lot about riding. Our products are high-performance products. They're on high-end bikes. Our target market is the top third of the market. So that's a different world. But most of those people that ride those bikes probably at some point are riding their bike to the grocery store, to the movies. So there's still that mentality in that person. And then they've grown in terms of their sophistication as a rider, in terms of their desire of what they want. And as the industry provides more product that feeds that need and that desire and that passion, everybody's hobby has become more intense than it used to be 25 years ago. When I started running, I run 5K races and 10K races, and I wasn't running marathons. Then I got to the point where I was running marathons. Now, the number of people that run a marathon is crazy. My first Chicago Marathon, there were 7,000 runners. 3 weeks ago, the Chicago Marathon had 50,000 runners. And that's true of all of them. The London Marathon, the New York Marathon, Boston Marathon, Berlin Marathon, they all sell out. So people have gotten more intense. They go deeper into what they do. I can't tell you why that's happened. But the same thing has happened to bikes. So I didn't know anybody had more than one bike. I didn't even know you would have more than one bike. Half the people I know have more than one bike. They have a road. So I think just things have gone to a higher level of interest, a higher level of passion. And then as products get better and people are able to reach that, then it creates its own wheel. And then, as I said, giving people a place to ride. And so our products, more of our business is actually mountain bikes than road bikes. And so that is where we lean toward helping trail development. Trail development's costly. You need the space to do it. You need development dollars to do it. but it's way less costly than putting a city bike lane in London or in downtown Chicago. Those tend to be things that have to come out of public funding. That comes out of the budget, the city of Chicago budget, the national budget. So while we care about that and we want to help, we're really more cheerleaders on that front. We are investors in the mountain bike trail world.
Mm-hmm. And with that, I wanted to kind of bring in kind of, the work, some of the work that you've been doing with the organization called National Interscholastic Cycling Association, or NICA.
Yeah. Yes.
And this is kind of it's an organization that supports youth cycling, bringing youths to try out mountain biking.
Yeah.
And you wanted, obviously, you start with encouraging young kids to feel that they can belong, they can have the rides, the space to try, and mountain biking presents that very nicely, because it allows you to do it in a controlled environment with trails that are well looked after. You don't have to go ride in public domain.
Yeah.
And you are, with these programs, you are investing in young riders in school-based leagues. So how does the investment, or kind of the advocacy investment that you're making, benefits those organizations, and as you rightly said, then filters down to SRAM, building kind of the pie of the consumer in the end?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Pedro, because NICA is so important to us. NICA is actually our single greatest investment in advocacy. Right. And NICA it's a lot more than biking. We love the fact that it's biking, right? But it's so much more. So let's just touch on that to start. And NICA themselves will say this. It's about youth development. The bike is the tool. But that youth development is physical fitness, it's mental health, it's socialization, it's getting kids outside and off their screens. All of that stuff is huge benefit.
Very important.
And for up till now, if you go to high school, middle school, whatever it is, there's basketball teams and there's baseball teams and there's football teams. But kids that rode bikes just sort of rode bikes. This gives them a place to be. It gives them a team to be a part of. And a lot of times those kids are kids that didn't play those sports and maybe didn't feel that they had a group or a set of peers. So having a NICA
space
team
for belonging.
Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect way to say it. So having a NICA team for them to join is great. If we go back to the selfish side, they'll know if you start somebody on something early, there's a much greater chance they're going to stay with it. And high school is exactly that right time, because everybody rides a bike as a kid. Almost everybody rides as a kid. It's fun. You don't really think about I'm a biker. You just think about it's
the freedom that it gives you as a child. You're able to go somewhere without your parents having to look over your shoulder.
Exactly. But you don't think of yourself as a biker.
No.
Then when you start to get to high school, and if you pick that path and that's what you want to be, like I'm a biker, I run a bike team, now all of a sudden you're getting attached to them. And when you get attached at that age, it's much greater you're going to stay with it. So then you go to college, maybe you have time to ride your mountain bike, maybe you don't. You get out of university, and now you have a job, and you maybe start to have a little bit of money, and you start to think, what am I going to do on my weekends? Now I'm working all weekend. And biking something that you knew, and something that if you really enjoyed it as a kid riding on a NICA team, comes what you do. Now you've got a customer for life. You've got a rider for life. And, maybe then things happen as people have kids. They don't have as much time to ride, but they've developed a taste for it. Yeah. And that sticks. If you don't start skiing when you're young, it's much harder to start skiing when you're 25 or 30. It's intimidating.
Yeah, for sure.
It's expensive. You don't know why you want to do it. It's a big leap. Same is true with biking.
Mm-hmm.
And NICA is the perfect start for that because it gets you on a mountain bike, gets you outside. Now you know what it is. It's not a scary thing to you.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to for people that might not still building a good picture of what NICA stands for. Like, can you break it down? You mentioned about, well, I mentioned about the kind of the school-based leagues. You mentioned about the mental health benefits, the mentorship benefits as well, and kind of the competitiveness of a sport starting at high school, which is kind of a very formative year for teens, both boys and girls. And how these, I wanted to kind of hear from you, how does this program kind of, is it solely focused on creating a pathway for a future mountain biker at the competitive level, or is it focused on nurturing an individual through a very formative kind of time span in their lives?
Yeah, you hit it on the second one, Pedro. So one of the things that I really like about NICA is they talk about the fact that it's about community, not competition. So of course, there's always kids that are competitive and want to win the race. But if you go to a NICA race, it's about joy and it's about families. And there's maybe, the big races like the state championship in Wisconsin. There's 1,300 riders, but there's 2,000 parents and siblings and friends that are there.
Of course, yeah.
And it's a festival. And the kids riding in each wave of riders, I would say 75% of them, maybe more, they don't even know who wins. They have no idea. They don't care. But they're, maybe racing against the kid next to them. And when you get close to the finish line, they kind of heat it up a little bit and try to pass that kid. But they're not there because they're finishing first in the state or because they're going to go to school on Monday morning and say, I was on the podium at the race on Saturday. It doesn't really, you don't get that feeling at all. You get a feeling of families and kids and siblings out riding bikes, having fun, and just enjoying it like you would. It's not a perfect example, but it's almost like going to a big picnic. And then instead of playing volleyball or softball, the kids at the picnic are riding bikes because there's food vendors and, they're there with family. I
think it's like, you have the examples of, college, high school sport where, families come out to support their sons, the siblings, and it becomes an event, a community event, kind of where everyone is there, whether it is cooking, eating, like watching sports, and it's like it's kind of that aspect of friendship, relationships, bonding. It all happens in the same space, and it's like you are doing this over an event with it. That could be football, could be soccer, could be any sport, but you're doing it with mountain biking.
And it allows more. It allows greater participation, right? A football team's got whatever it is, 50, 60 kids on it. A basketball team's got 15, 20 kids on it. There's no limit on how many kids you can put on bikes. And they always talk about it's a no-cut sport. If you want to be on the bike team, you're on the bike team. If you want to be on the football team, you might not make it. And so
that's important distinction because it just kind of it removes the barriers to, you don't have to have a certain level of competence to be welcomed. And I wanted to understand it a little bit more. Is like, we know cycling can be quite a difficult sport to get into. Not mainly, but one of the reasons is because of the economic factor. Many families struggle to purchase a bike. You gave the example of in the 90s purchasing a Trek for $600, and your friends were calling you nuts for spending so much money on a bike. And that's the reality we have at the moment. So how does NICA and SRAM work with this problem?
It's something we talk about all the time, Pedro. It's another really great point. And that one of the beauty of kids is they're not as, this isn't true of all of them, but they're not as materialistically focused as adults. So there are kids on all sorts of bikes, right? There are kids who have really nice mountain bikes. There are kids that just have, what most of us might call a beater bike, but they can still be out there having fun. And because the type of bike is not the limiting factor to get you into the game. So at that football player, you got to be in shape. You got to have, the ability, and it's a limited on how number of people can be there. And if you're not one of the better kids, you're not going to get to play. You're going to sit on the bench the whole time. It doesn't matter on biking. Everybody gets to play. Everybody's on the team. So you play where you are, whatever bike you have. And there's kids that are on not great bikes that are leading the pack. Yeah. And there are kids that are great bikes that can't keep up with anyone. So it really doesn't, it's nice. It's a little bit of status there. And, kids like that, but it kind of really is not about the bike.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's that inclusivity. And it's also that if you're not a big kid or you're not a strong kid, you're not going to go out for the football team or the baseball team because you can't do it. But that doesn't matter. That is all gone on these high school mountain bike teams. And it's all fun. And you talked about, the competition side of it. And you said, it's about community, not competition. And there actually is I'd say a subset of people who want NICA to be more competitive than it is. Because they think they're the kids that we want a Devo league, like development league, and think, is this the place where I'm going to get my kid on a bike and then they're going to become really good and they might cycle on a college cycle team. And then maybe they're going to start racing in juniors or some other league. That's not what NICA's for. It just isn't. And there's always a little bit of a struggle with that subset of people that are looking for that. But that's not what drives it.
I did to I think one of the things that I think is quite important to take away is bikes are fun. Bikes are to play with. And then sometimes I hear so much where that fun element, that playfulness is removed from riding bikes. And, you were talking about those moments riding in the 90s and then just as a kind of way to socialize with your friends, the program NICA as a way to get kids really to enjoy playing and and using the bike as a means to that. And I think everyone will agree with you and I that that's universal. Like you want kids to feel like they can enjoy bikes, they can use bikes to have a bit of more freedom. And I wanted to kind of reflect on the role that bike shops, non-profits, volunteer organizations play in the success of the kind of advocacy investments that brands like SRAM is putting effort into. So because SRAM it's alone can't do this, So how do you work together, as a ecosystem, if you will, with all these touch points where, a girl will go to the bike shop, will have a parent, will have an organization, will have the school, and all kind of create a convergence of interests towards, let's say, mountain biking, so that mountain biking can seem a great alternative in regard, against other sport, against other activity.
Yeah. You're totally right about calling it an ecosystem, right? Like the SRAM can't do it on its own. And those people can't ride bikes if there aren't bikes available from, with SRAM parts and on Trek bikes and on, Cube bikes and specialized bikes and all that stuff. So there's that ecosystem there. The nonprofits are really the angels of the industry, because they're the ones that there's mountain bike clubs everywhere. And those mountain bike clubs have dig days on Saturday where they go out and they dig trails, they maintain the trails. They're all nonprofits. There is no such thing as a for-profit mountain bike club. It doesn't exist. So they're the ones, they don't always have money, right? So we give them money. We don't give them a ton of money, but we give them enough to buy some shovels, buy some, maybe buy a backhoe or whatever tool they need to help support them. And then that does tie into that. Those are the volunteers, and those are where the volunteers from the bike shop come in, and they're all out. And that's, again, it gets back to community. It's a great community that people go out on Saturday and they bring lunch and they maybe bring beers and they dig for a while. Then they hop on their bikes and ride for a while. So that's all of how you get that infrastructure. Now, there's also big organizations, but they're big nonprofits. IMBA, which is the International Mountain Bike Association, which is US and Europe, they are super instrumental in helping to break through with land managers, because you need to have access. Even if you had enough shovels and dirt and people to build everything, you have to have a place to put it. And that's becoming more and more of an issue with EMTBs and electric bikes, is people who question the access of an electric mountain bike, not knowing that an electric mountain bike has no different impact than a non-electric mountain bike. So those big organizations are also the godsend, because we can't do what they're doing. We're not the ones who are at City Hall all the time, who are talking to, in the US, there's the Bureau of Land Management, there's the Department of Forestry, there's public lands, whether they're national parks. So that's all the place where the land is. And you need to get on that land to be able to build trails. And historically, a lot of those trails came about as being hiking trails and equestrian trails, and go back to the 90s when I was biking in San Francisco. And it was very controversial, because these mountain bikes were new things. And the hikers and the people on horses did not want this bike zipping by them. And that was the days when there were T-shirts that said, mountain biking is not a crime. And, there was a lot of community debate on whether or not they would allow mountain bikes. Now that still exists in some places, but to a small extent. But that was a big breakthrough, and it happened because of those not-for-profits. It happened because of those community groups that came together and said, biking's important to us. We want to ride bikes. We want an opportunity to do this. And it wasn't always pretty, right? There was a lot of conflict.
Well, I'm sure if with anything new, that you will have people that won't know what it is, won't believe on the benefits. And so that it's always very polarizing until you start gaining more traction.
And the mountain bikers were seen as these roughnecks, right? There were road bikers, but the road bikers were clean, and they weren't riding in dirty trails, and they ride in nice, clean clothes. And then you get these mountain bikers out there that are covered with mud, and they look different, and they might all have long hair or tattoos, and they're wearing ratty clothing, and they just look like outlaws. And the mountain bike community, and we've talked about this, sort of did themselves a disservice by trying to be that outlaw. And the original case was mountain biking went off-road, right? That was it. You were off doing your own thing. You were creating your own path. Literally, you were being non-mainstream. And mountain biking leaned into that. Like, we're the cool dudes. We're not following the rules. And that didn't do us any favors for a long time, because it created this us versus them. And it created this, like I said, these were outlaws who were doing this, not inclusive and bringing other people. And the other thing that came out of that was mountain bikers who started building trails, built trails for themselves, which typically were hardcore trails. They didn't
Yeah.
want the beginner out there. They didn't want somebody that was just learning. That person's not cool enough. That person's not strong enough. And now we get it. Now it's totally like skiing. You have black trails for the people that are really good, really aggressive, really want that challenge.
Yeah.
And you have blue trails and green trails that people are learning. So when you put in a mountain bike area, a mountain bike park, it's so important to have
That's correct. Yeah.
trail types for every skilled rider. It gets back to
Exactly,
inclusivity, and it get back to eliminating that intimidation factor. Because it's this, it's got fat wheels and people are wearing these padded shorts and helmets that are heavy helmets and special shoes and all that stuff gets very intimidating. If you make the trail intimidating too, it's just going to make it worse.
Yeah, I think that's I've talked with the other guests, and kind of the image of the mountain biking has been affected by trying to be too extreme, and big people that see that and then they might get scared and put off by that image. And I just want to ride my bike. I don't need to jump over massive drops. That presents a challenge. And kind of how it's interesting because you have been kind of very early on it's not very early on, but in the 90s was still mountain biking was very much kind of taking hold of the people's minds and what it signified, and got to a point now where it's more widespread. A lot more people want to do it. There's a lot more women doing it, and I think from this angle, the NICA angle, your advocacy work with NICA, and how have this image shifted, and have you had to do any work to kind of move the dial so that parents that grew up in the 80s, in the 90s, with the image of mountain biking as being this extreme thing, like off the beaten track, very alternative thing to and now they are presented with a different image of mountain biking. What is walk me through the transition, because it has to be some kind of educating process, because people have that image and you have to demystify what mountain biking is.
Yes, and it definitely was a transition. It's been a transition, and I wouldn't put that in advocacy. I'd put that on marketing and business.
Okay.
So in order to get a greater audience, you want to sell more mountain bikes, you need to have more people riding them. And that's not going to be just this hardcore group of people. That was basically 20 to 30-year-old men. That was it. Right. And if you go back and look at advertising, I think this is one of the great things is in the 90s, when you were advertising a mountain bike, it was some dude, definitely a dude, kicking up a rooster tail of dirt, right? That's what it was. It was showing somebody was a badass, somebody who didn't want to be mainstream. And there were never women in those ads. There were never kids in those ads. And now when you look at marketing, you see everybody represented. You see women, you see kids. And this is the NICA thing too, that we actually just got a NICA league in Illinois. So NICA leagues are done by state. It's really great. We've been looking at it for a long time. And last night, the league director was here at our office, and we've been working with him out. And he just got his posters, and he gave me 3 posters. And the posters are, one has a whole lineup of young girls at the start of a race. Never would have seen that before. Another has a African-American adult and a kid. Also didn't see that. You never saw people of color on a mountain bike. And then the third one has a black kid riding alone on a trail, I think. But the inclusivity that we're showing there, nobody did that. And part of it was people didn't want more people because they didn't want their trails to be crowded, right? And they didn't want to be friends with those people. They wanted to stay in their insular cool dudes club. That's what made it cool, was not everybody was doing it. Now, from a rider standpoint, you can do that. But if you're in the bike business, you want to sell more bikes, that's a small market, right? You got to start selling to everybody out there. And
exactly, yeah.
So as we got smarter, but we also, like, marketing, likes to show the extreme of stuff, right? It shows the most beautiful people at a beach, driving a car in the coolest road. Mountain biking was doing that too, right? People on super steep slopes, people jumping over rocks. Like we said, all of that stuff. And now marketing has gotten that. And we're not just marketing to the high end. You still want to sell something aspirational, and you still want to show people that this is something, you're going to sell the higher end of it, but you're putting more people in it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I'm interested in finding out, like, from that image, kind of, that you've been painting, what do you think has been the kind of the key levers that have been moved to shift, to dial from a traditional model of supporting races, kind of the marketing images, to now brands looking at advocacy, investment, to really nurture a younger generation, get them into the sport through community level or projects, organizations, so that you kind of open the doors to more people. So what has been kind of the levers that need to be kind of pulled to that to happen? Because I imagine it needs to, as obviously as a society we have been through a transition, but what, from a brand perspective, what has needed to happen for that to become more crystallized?
I think you've hit a lot of it, Pedro, the idea of opening doors to more people. For one thing, it's simply a business equation, right? If your target market is 100 people, that's small. If your target market is 1,000 people, you're going to have a better business. So growing it, expanding to more, like you said, to women, to people of color, to kids. Now all of a sudden your market's a lot bigger. You got a lot more opportunity to sell more bikes.
Yeah.
The other thing that's happened is, that I think you would call just the maturation of the industry. But the industry matured by also having more people come into it. When I started at SRAM 20 plus years ago, it was almost understood that when you interviewed somebody for the job, you asked them what bike they rode.
Right.
And that isn't what we do anymore. We talk about, you always ask you to ride bikes, whatever it is, but that's just getting to know somebody personally. But they need a skill set. They need to understand marketing and the 4 Ps that go along with it. They need to be an engineer and can design a product. All our engineers used to be mountain bikers, which is great. And there's still an element of that you need to understand your customer. But you don't want every engineer to only be a mountain biker, because then it's going to limit the way you think of things. And the same thing has happened with bringing women into the industry. Bringing women into the industry is not just bringing women on bikes. It's bringing women in to work for the companies. And you mentioned earlier April Marsky and the program that she just did about bringing women into the industry to work in the industry. There's been this terrible saying, and I'm going to say it reluctantly, but the men in the industry said, you want to make a bike for a woman? Shrink it and pink it. That's what they said forever. Just make it smaller and paint it pink and a woman will ride it. That's not true at all. And in order to really understand what a woman rides on a bike needs and wants, a woman needs to design it. It's that simple. And so as we've done that, it's broadened that audience. And like I said, then that builds the business. And it's come along with all the people that worked at bike companies into the 90s. They worked there because they couldn't get a job anywhere else, right? They worked in a bike shop and then they went to work at a bike company. They were never going to be a consultant. They were never going to be a marketing person. They were never going to work at a bank because they didn't have that skill set. But now we have people that have all those other skill sets. Just makes us smarter. And it's more about, it's moved from being seen as just a hobby to seen as a business. It's an industry.
Yeah, there's definitely a maturation happening, and it kind of this as we getting more people from outside, kind of, that are not necessarily enthusiasts or hobbyists, and come to the industry because it's a business that they are interested in, rather than because it's cycling that interests them. That brings diverse voices, that brings more people with expert knowledge of their specific fields. So it's it's definitely a very positive move, and we're still working on that. And I think that's where, with the business case of opening doors, like this is business sense to open the business to more people, widen the pie of possible customers coming to us. And from your perspective, where you sit, what surprised you the most, both positively or negatively, about building partnerships, across sectors, across the many organizations you work with, to grow the cycling infrastructure?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things on that one, Pedro, that it's easy to connect with the Mountain Bike Association. It's easy to connect with the NICA teams because we all have this shared interest, right? We love bikes. We love to ride bikes. We want to see more people riding bikes. And then, I don't want to say it's just a bonus to the health factor of it and the mental health factor of it, because that's equally there. That's part of why we love riding bikes and part of why we consider them valuable. So that partnership's easy. All we need to do is talk to each other, and we all want to do it together. The bigger one, and I don't know if you're aware of this, is we are engaged in a project together with Shimano, Specialized, Trek, and Giant. So there's a town in Arizona where all 5 of us are participating. There's a bike trail there. There's programs for kids in elementary school. There's programs for kids in middle school. There's a NICA team for kids to race bikes. There's a program at the high school that teaches you how to work on bikes. And all 5 of us went in and did it together. And
right. Okay. I didn't know that. So walk me through a bit more. How did you got all of these big players coming together?
That's the big question, Pedro. And
tell me that.
It was easy. It turns out, if you talk to people, and people laugh at me all the time because I've been saying this for 2 years now. SRAM's not competing against Shimano, and Trek's not competing against Specialized. We're all competing against pickleball and video games, right? So we want to get people on bikes, and the collective bike industry is competing against the other alternatives these people could do. Skiing and snowboarding, backpacking, canoeing, video games, gaming. And so we're all vying for people's time and for their interests. We want to spend that time on a bike for our business, and also because that's what we like to do, and we like to have people that do what we do. And so because of that, as we started these conversations, we all go to the same conferences, right? Like, again, being in the industry for 20 years, I know people at Trek, I know people at Specialized, I know people, I've got what I call friends. And we started talking about doing these projects together. And there's always some element of marketing. You want to put in a trail somewhere, and you want it to be the SRAM trail. You don't want it to be the Shimano trail because you want it. But if there's no trail, nobody wins. And if there's a trail, in this case in Arizona, there's a trail, and there's kids that are getting bikes, and there's kids that are learning how to fix bikes, and there's kids that are on a bike team. It took everybody to do that. And any one of those elements on their own, none of us could afford to do all that on our own. Right. So the investment that it took 5 companies to pull it off. If you went to trail there, but there were no kids with bikes, trail is
exactly
better. If you could donate a bunch of bikes and the kids don't have a place to ride them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does require a lot of infrastructure.
That's the real ecosystem.
Mhm.
And it's fun,
So,
right?
hmm,
I like the people. I have friends that trek, and one of the things that's happened in the last few years that's been really interesting to see is, as you know, the pandemic was the best thing that happened to the bike industry in the last, probably since mountain bikes came out in the 90s, and there was an explosion. People couldn't go to health clubs, they couldn't go on vacation, they couldn't go out to dinner, they couldn't do a lot of things. They were trapped at home, but they could go outside and ride a bike. And so
yeah.
everybody bought bikes and everybody won, right? Trek sold more
Mhm.
bikes, Specialized sold more bikes, we sold more parts, Shimano sold more parts. It's that trite saying of rising tide lifts all ships. The bigger pie means more pie for everyone. We got that. And up until
Mhm.
then, we're all like, well, we just want to beat Shimano. Shimano wants to beat SRAM. Now, SRAM and Shimano want to beat these other alternative activities. And that's going to, if the industry grows by
Mhm.
10%, SRAM's probably going to grow
Everyone
by
wins.
35. Everyone wins.
So I'm interested, like, how did you, if you can talk a bit about this project in Arizona, you know, how was this a concerted effort? Like, how did you came together? Because this not obviously, there is an element, by having this, we are contributing to this community. We're building infrastructure, trails, a bike library, if you will,
Yep.
skills workshops, all
Yep.
of it, so that everyone that doesn't know anything about bikes can get there, like, and ride a bike, learn about how to fix it, and so on. But well, my question is, in a world where everyone is vying for every dollar available, how do you put together competing brands, that they want the same dollar to work together, and
Yeah.
which for what it is, for what you described, is very much an advocacy investment,
Yes.
or advocacy dollars.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to get an immediate return on your investment.
No.
So how did you get all these brands working together?
So, like most things in the bike industry, it started with beer. So there's an annual conference in the US called the Bicycle Leadership Conference. And it's
Right.
always been about advocacy. It's about the bike companies come together, think about the issues for the industry. Some
Mhm.
of them, in today's time, it's tariffs. And in
Mhm.
earlier times, it might have been safety and it might have been land access. So
Yeah.
all the companies come together and it's 3 days, 2.5 days. And there's, usually a bike ride or two in there. And there's presenters that, bring up issues and statistics on the industry, where we are, and all sorts of things like that. And then at the evening, inevitably you get together, you have dinner, you start having beers, and next thing you know, it's, close to midnight and you're talking about business, right? And you're talking about bikes, because that's what we talk about, right? We're not there to talk about politics. We're not there to talk about sports. We talk about
Yeah.
bikes. And so we're talking about things, and we're talking about, there's all the advocacy people from the companies there. And it just sort of bubbled up of people doing different things. Trek does a lot of trail investment. There's a Trek Foundation, and they help to build trails
Yeah.
places. Specialized has a program called Outride, and it's meant to be, you can outride anything. And so it's for middle school students. So typically 5th graders to 8th graders, and schools will apply for the program. They get bikes donated by Specialized. They get a curriculum donated, which, again, like the NICA model, is they train a gym teacher to teach the kids how to ride bikes. But
Right.
that's sort of a smokescreen, because as they learn to ride bikes, they build self-confidence. They learn to make friends because they're riding with other kids. They learn to, they get outside, and so there's a mental health component to it. All those things, that's not what the kid signed up to do, but it turned out that's what he got. So
Yeah.
Outride does that. Specialized does that. Shimano and SRAM, because we're component makers, that's where the big maintenance is on a bike. right? Like you don't need to fix a frame, but you need to adjust the derailleur. You need to fix the brakes. You need to replace a bottom bracket or a crank. So SRAM and Shimano came in and said, okay, well, there's a program that's called Project Bike Tech that goes to high schools, and it's a high school class that's shop class. And in that shop class, you learn how to work on bikes. And so we said, okay, so there was a small town. Trek had already looked there and was putting in a trail. Outride from Specialized went and said, okay, well, the trail's next to the school. We'll use that school. So there's all these anchors now. And then SRAM and Shimano said, okay, well, there's a high school there. Let's put the program there. And then Giant came into the game, and Giant donated bikes for the high school shop class. And this town actually does not have a bike shop. And so it all became magic, right? There's now a place for kids to ride. There's bikes for them to ride. There's kids learning how to fix those bikes. And there's a NICA team. And all that stuff, as we all said, like couldn't happen without all of us. Trek could go put a trail anywhere they want. But if there's no bikes, who knows what's going to happen? Specialized could pick a school anywhere they want and give bikes to kids. I don't know, those kids might be riding the bikes in the parking lot. And you could set up school. So, and then when you start to look at that, it's really a no-brainer, right? It basically just meant we need to say, instead of wanting to be selfish and saying, no, I don't want these other companies around, I want to stand out. We said, okay, we drop our swords and it's all the greater good. And it's not that. And like I say, we have beers together. We've known these guys for years. And it took a little while to figure out how to find the right role for everybody. And because there was a time when we thought about, like, how about if everybody puts in $50,000, well, $250,000, we can go do a project. And Trek said, our preference is really to build trails. That's what we've done in the past. That's what we like to do. Specialized said, our preference is the kids program. We want to teach kids how to ride bikes. We like the mental health aspect of it. SRAM and Shimano said, these bikes have to get fixed. These bikes are going to break. And everybody has seen broken bikes in garages and at the school that nobody rides. That's not doing any good. How do we solve all that? And solve it in one place. And now, of course, we're thinking about where's our next place going to be. And it might not have every component in it. But the other thing that happened, Pedro, is we had this great session or run of the pandemic where we all sold more than we've ever sold before. Then everybody had a bike and nobody needed a new bike in 23 and 24. And there was a lot of inventory in the industry because bikes were overbuilt. And so sales started to slip. So after having these great years, now we're in this position where, wow, things are not so good anymore. And what that did was made the companies bond together. Because up till then, it was all this sort of one-to-one combat. SRAM versus Shimano, Trek versus Specialized, name your European brands. But then as we all suffered, we all felt like we gotta start fighting, not Shimano. We gotta fight the video games, right? And so it became a better understanding of we're all in this together, and our boat that had the rising tide 3 years ago, the tide's now dropping and we're all sinking. So we came together on that. And like I said, it's been great. I consider these guys friends. I'm happy to have a beer with them anytime. And we talk regularly. There's a monthly call with all of us. That never happened before. It just wasn't something we did.
Wow. Yeah.
And then once we started doing it, we realized, I guess it's not that hard.
Why haven't we done this before?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, but it's brilliant. It's a great example where, through the circumstances, you just kind of finding out kind of a problem, kind of a niggling thing that both, all of these players had, and you kind of came together and just try to address it, and kind of realizing that actually there is something here that we can do together to benefit all of us in one go. And rather than us trying to build something separately, and to that point about thinking well, if you will, to excuse me, the metaphor is like outside the box. Looking beyond the kind of the the kind of the already the market that you have, but looking beyond what is possible. Going after the gaming industry, going after the soccer, going after all the other possible activities that a teenager will have to them. And some of them are readily available, some aren't. And by creating these spaces whether it is through school curriculums, trails, bike clinics, and so on, putting together the infrastructure, the network, so that it's not an obstacle, but it's kind of a viable option for someone to take up bicycling.
Yeah. Another thing we used to talk about a lot that speaks to this is we used to sell people their second, third, fourth, fifth bike, right? Mm-hmm. So we had this audience, and all we tried to do was get them a better bike. So you may be like this. I own 4 bikes, 5 bikes. Everybody I work with has 4 or 5 bikes. And that's not building the business, right? Just selling me another bike isn't growing the industry. But when we said, okay, well, let's sell bikes to more women. Let's sell bikes to people of color. Let's give them people more places to ride. Now there's a reason to have a bike. And it was all about, and we knew that. We always knew that growing the market was not about selling me my 4th bike. That's not going to get it. Bringing more people in to new riders, NICA does that, right? NICA gets somebody, and it gets them riding a bike earlier. And if you ride a bike when you're 16, 17 years old, you're far more likely to ride a bike when you're 25. And of course we love to see kids on bikes. It's great for the kids. It's great but that's really not the best target for your future riders because everybody's doing it. It's not really hot. Like I said, riding a bike when you're 10 years old is not because you're a bike rider. It's because that's what you have. When you start to ride in high school, you're like, some kids are like, I'm a football player. Like, I'm a bike rider. I'm a mountain biker. I liken it to when you invest in a stock, right? If you buy stock in that kid that's 10 years old because you want them to know they're going to ride a bike when they're 25, it's really not a great investment because you don't know. You buy stock in the kid that's 18 that's riding a bike or 15, that stock's got a much better opportunity to grow. So you pick that you make that choice smartly. And, we don't make kids' bikes. We want people to have kids' bikes. That's important. But from SRAM's standpoint, and there's always that no true altruism, we do consider ROI, the return on investment. You can't measure it. You know that you can't measure it, but you can make an educated guess on whether or not investing in kids' bikes versus investing in high school mountain bikes is going to pay off better.
Yeah. That's a choice that SRAM makes to make that kind of investment. There are the players that choose to go the other way and invest earlier on. As long as there is brands that cover every spectrum of the market, and provide options, and kind of break barriers in the process, we are all winning along the way.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask is because you took up this role in 2023. Has there been a project or a moment from your advocacy journey that left a lasting emotional impacting on you?
It's definitely this project in Arizona. And we've called it the Peloton Project. We always debate whether or not that's a good name. But it's really about when you look at a Peloton in a bike race, there's people from all different teams. And they're all working together. Now, somebody still wants to win, right? That's there. But the Peloton goes faster by being a Peloton than it goes by every one of those riders.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Most things are simple when you boil them down, right? When you take ego out and you take out, all this overcomplication of things, it took us taking ego out of ourselves to put this project together with all of our different companies. It did take that. But the concept is, this is a Peloton. This is going to go faster and better than if anyone does it alone. And it's the perfect analogy.
How long has the project been going on for?
So I think the beers were started in this bicycle leadership conference in 2024, and it's in March. So that's sort of when the kernel, and then we started having, I talked to the guy from Trek. The Trek guy would talk to the Shimano guy. I'd talk to the guy at Giant. The Giant guy would talk to Shimano. These conversations kept happening, and we kept thinking, what can we do? And it was, it was a little bit of a dream out there. And then they kept evolving, and then we said, we should all talk together. We should have a group call, and then we just kept building it. So, and then when the school opened in this past fall is when everything came together. So that's when the bike programs are there. That's when the bike trail opened, the bike park. So if you call it September of 2025, it was really complete. And in March 2024, it's a year and a half to really get there. And it took it looked a lot of different ways, right? There were times when it looked like, all right, SRAM and Trek are going to do this together. And we didn't have enough to do it. And then Trek and Specialized kind of looked at it like, that kind of doesn't really work for us. There's a marketing element to it, like I said, right? So maybe they don't want to be in the same boat. People looked at SRAM and Shimano that way. But then we got over ourselves, right? As we took the ego out of it and said, this is about helping kids. This is about helping a community. And ultimately it's probably going to be good for the business. But it's not, it wasn't driven by that.
Well, I mean, there's the kind of the element as well. I mean, that in itself kind of establishes a blueprint. Whether you can replicate this in future projects, it remains to be seen. But I think like having put so much time and effort into delivering this project and kind of having it started in just a few months ago, it speaks to the tenacity of everyone involved in, at least having a little of a play and trying to contribute in some way. Yes, the ego also needs to be, kept in check, because with these things you have the pride of the brand, but I think kind of from a knowledge that I have, from the cycling industry, is that the impact that COVID had, kind of the whiplash effect on sales, that has kind of bonded more the kind of people in the industry even more. And as you rightly pointed, you need to kind of look at the bigger picture rather than focusing on our own on little worlds here and try to focus. Well, we're not going to grow if we keep fighting for the same from the same thin margins. And I think the role of advocacy and from big brands such as SRAM is that allows opportunities to happen in communities that wouldn't have access to bikes, whether it is in high schools that don't have where cycling or bicycling is not an option, and that's I think is massive. In not just from obviously it creates then new opportunities for the brand, but it just grows the market. The potential market is there, and you need to think about the business case for this. It's like, are we growing? Are we going to get a return on investment from this? The answer is not necessarily, but we are growing if we get and give more to the communities, if we help, whether it is with a small grant of money, whether it is with equipment, whether it's building trails infrastructure or lobbying governments, all adds up. And with that case in Arizona, it's just when you put together such big brands, there will be a bit of headbutting, but there might be a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Yeah. This conference is great. I've been going to this conference for years, and that's why that's part of the reason I consider all these folks friends. I've known them for a long time. And during the pandemic, okay, so first we didn't have the conference, right? And then when it came back, it was this huge party, right? Everybody's celebrating. We're all making lots of money. We're all having great years. And then last year, Jen Dice, who is the CEO of People for Bikes, which is the U.S. National Advocacy Organization, opens up the conference and says, this is a little bit like a group therapy session. Because we're all licking our wounds a bit, right? Like we all knew that everybody was not having the best year of our lives. And I really felt like there was a shift in the way we all looked at each other and the way we all sort of, it sounds a little goofy, but cared about each other because we're all feeling the same pain. And I felt like that was something that sort of, it just, enforced that we're feeling like we need to do more together. It's, it's the bike industry against the world. And then sort of along with that, as we sort of pulled these bigger brands together, the bigger brands still have more money, right? So the bigger brands, it's easier for us to be philanthropic, if you will, or put in advocacy.
Yeah.
But that makes it our responsibility. And we look at this, and this is very much SRAM, and SRAM was founded by Stan Day. It's an incredibly humble leader. And so we want to do this by leading with humility. We feel like we're a big company in the industry. We should give back, and we should leverage our influence to try to demonstrate, basically model behavior, even knowing that we don't expect everybody to be able to do it. They can't all afford to do it. But we don't want to beat them over the head and say, you should be giving money to this. You should help with the Peloton project in Arizona. Maybe they can't do it. That's okay. But maybe they can on a smaller basis. So as we go, the expectation is, so we're going to present the results of this project at the Bicycle Leadership Conference in March. And I'm pretty sure, I'm willing to bet on this, that we're going to present this, SRAM, Shimano, Trek, Specialized, and Giant.
Wow, okay.
And lunch or dinner or beers, people are going to start to say to us, hey, how can we help? How can we get involved in that? We don't have $50,000. We have $5,000. Or we have, X product. Can we be involved? Yeah. And part of it is sitting at the cool kids table, right? Like everybody wants to sit with the big kids. And, SRAM and Shimano, Trek, they're the big kids, right? And, come sit at the table with us. Come join us. And I think that there's going to be power in that. And I'm an optimistic guy. I see this staying with us in our DNA as an industry, not as a DNA as an individual. And it's the greater good. It's industry citizenship. And again, SRAM wants to demonstrate that. SRAM wants to be a leader, but lead with, not lead of.
I think the people listening to this conversation, to the example that you are giving in Arizona, will immediately will think, well, these are the big brands. They have the money, they have the bucks to do something like this. But a little brand like me, I don't have the resources. But my response to that would be, well, yes, the big brands have a responsibility to set the example. And as a small brand, maybe you have to look into the organization that you run and to say, well, is there any way I can give back, whether it is through time, whether it is through product, and then look at other companies within that are competitors or are like not competitors but are kind of within the same market, but you can work with them without affecting your bottom line, if you will. And that's kind of is what that example is setting, is just, well, we, the big brands can work together, even though it's a project in Arizona. There's the possibilities in terms of other projects whether big or small, that can happen as well. Regionally across many, whether it is in UK, whether it is in US, it doesn't have to be something big. So that's what I think puts in perspective, because people will always say, well, the big brands are not doing, why should I care?
Yeah.
And then
right.
And if you set the example, then at least you're saying, well, we are capable of moving aside for a moment our differences and try to work together.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have our budget, but you can look at the product you have. You can look at maybe time you have, and try in your own ways come together as well. So I think looking forward to the reactions.
Yeah, and you think about this program, Project Bike Tech, which is teaching kids how to build bikes and repair bikes. And they set up a classroom. There's 11 bikes, one for the instructor, 10 for students. There's bike stands, there's toolboxes. Park Tool can help with donating some tools. Pedro's, right? Pedro's, which makes some tools. Yeah. They make, lubricants, and they make consumables. They can contribute those. Tire company could contribute tires. So you're right. There's other ways for people to contribute in a way that they can. You always want to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
And that's a great way to have it. And again, the optimist in me, and it's super trite, but it's also a great example for people everywhere, right? Like, there's a lot of division in the world today, and when you come together, you find out you really do have a lot more in common.
Yeah.
Maybe this is my dream. Maybe this is my dream for the world, Pedro. A Peloton project for the world.
All of us have to dream. All of us have to have a dream and try to aim high, because if you don't have that ambition, if you don't have that vision, nothing else is there.
Yeah.
You have to have goals. Otherwise, where's the point?
Right. And as I said multiple times, I love bikes. I really do. And all the people at Shimano love bikes, and the people at Trek love bikes. And so we all want this. We all want to see. We're all happy when we see more people riding a bike.
Exactly.
And it's not, and it isn't really, would I rather see SRAM parts on a bike than Shimano parts? Sure. Of course. But I'd rather see somebody riding a Shimano bike than driving a car.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Or riding a motorcycle. Just would. So.
Brilliant. So now, Rob, I wanted to bring this to a point where bring to a close, if you will, to a question that I always ask of my guests, and it summarizes them, and finishes in a personal tone. And the question is, what does success look like to you personally?
Personally as an individual, or personally in the bike industry?
As an individual.
Once again, I'm going to go simple, Pedro.
Go for it.
I think success is health and happiness, and satisfaction, and being content with the way I live my life, the opportunities I have, the family and friends that I have, and what allows me to build that. I really think that I like to think of the 5 key things in life are kindness, empathy, generosity, humility, and gratitude. And when I live by those 5 traits, they sound really altruistic. They sound like I'm going to be nice to you. But what they really do is make me happier. I know what to do in every situation, right? If someone cuts me off in traffic, I should still be kind to them. If, somebody does something well, I should be generous and give them a compliment. And I should always appreciate, I'm really fortunate to work at SRAM. I just am. And I appreciate that. And so just appreciating those things, and knowing there's always things you can appreciate and enjoy them and share them.
Exactly.
It's a little fluffy.
No. I mean, it's very valuable, that answer, because it just, puts in perspective, how you frame life, and more importantly, how you go about your day to day and how you see yourself in the world. And that's so important, to kind of, one, as like how you want to be seen and what you want to give back to the world. I think it's a very powerful message, to anyone out there listening.
I also feel it's the
Myself
benefit of
included.
age, right? I've been around for a while. Perspective helps. You
Sure.
realize these little things that sort of bother you and seem like a big thing,
Yeah.
they probably aren't. But there are big
Exactly.
things, right? There are big things about, doing the right thing and
Exactly. That's what it matters.
being good in the world.
For sure.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out, Pedro.
Go for
The
it.
Gandhi quote of "You must be the change you wish to see in the world."
Yeah, it's
It's a great
precisely.
one. It's a great one.
It's very true. Precisely. I mean, yeah, you have to take the responsibility for that.
Yeah.
If you want to live in a better world, then you have to be responsible for that change as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we come to the point on the podcast where I started a tradition where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is what changes can we make in the cycling industry to make more inclusive to everybody?
Obviously a broad question, right? I think I just say get one friend to go on a ride with you. And somebody that's not riding now, right? Somebody that sort of aspires to that, but feels like they can't keep up, or feels like they don't have a fancy bike, they don't have the right clothes. Reach out to them. Tell them you ride anywhere they want to go. You'll ride any speed they want to ride, and you'll ride 1 mile to 100 miles with them, whatever they want. And just do it and enjoy it. Don't try to do it competitively.
Really?
Don't try to get the KOM on Strava. Just do it to enjoy it and connect with a person and bring that person, show them why you love biking. And maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't. That's okay. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
show them. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, just show them that simplicity. And pretty much everything I've said is all about simplicity. Yeah. It's not complicated.
It's a great viewpoint and a great answer, because it just is opening a door to someone else that doesn't see cycling as a way of having fun, being playful, socializing, and that's kind of, even though they might not want to ride it ever again, but at least you tried. You've shown them something that is possible, that they wouldn't think it wasn't. So yeah, it's a brilliant insight. I think it's very easy to start. Go out, rent a bike if you have to.
Yeah.
Take a friend, go for a coffee, go for a 15 minutes loop or a 30-minute loop around the park. It doesn't have to be big. You just have to be out pedaling and then stop, have a chat.
Yeah.
Exactly. Brilliant. So, following on tradition, what question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Okay, while we were talking, I was starting to think about it. And you know what, Pedro? I think everybody likes to talk about these great things of like, what's your dream for biking, or what's your favorite bike, or what are you doing to make a difference? And you know what I'm going to ask? I'm going to come from a different angle. I would ask, what are you worried about? What are you worried about for the bike industry? What do you think is going to limit us? What's our big bad thing out there that we're going to have to combat to make sure that we can continue to make this industry what we want it to be?
That's a great point. Because it's like, you do need to have a 360 view and of the industry you work with, in the life you are leading, and that the answer where might go anywhere.
And obviously we've talked about all these great things, Pedro's, and all the things that are going well, all the reasons I love it. I have a lot of things that I worry about as well. There's a lot of things I worry about for the industry and the future, where we're going to be 10 years from now. So I do think about them.
Well, maybe we'll leave at that now, but maybe that's something for a new podcast with you, Rob, in the future.
Okay.
What is so that's we'll put a pin on that, and we'll maybe have a second one.
Sure.
Brilliant, Rob. It has been a pleasure talking about your work, cycling advocacy, the strides that you have been taking to make the sport more inclusive, more open to new kids, new youth, and the passion that you have as well for cycling, which is very, easier for everyone to listen and to see. So thanks for your time and for your incredible generosity.
Pedro, thank you. This has really been an enjoyable conversation. You're right. I'm a bike nerd. I appreciate somebody that's willing to talk to me about it. And it's passion. Some people also think it's crazy, but I really appreciate it. It's really been fun to talk.
And that wraps up today's ride with Rob Cappucci, a conversation that reminded us that advocacy isn't just about policy or products. It's most importantly about people. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with 2 friends who care about cycling as much as you do. And don't forget to follow Ride to Success wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps us grow the podcast and bring you more amazing stories like this. Before you go, as always, keep riding forward, keep riding to your own version of success. Thanks for listening.